My brother Tyler was the only person who died when his bus crashed into a pole. Dad started coaching a boy named Jeremy, who threw just like Tyler, and called him Ty during practice. When I found Dad at a campground making Jeremy wear Tyler's jersey and run drills, while the kid cried, "I want to go home," I called 911. After his release from psychiatric hold, Dad created a storage unit with 2-bedroom setups, one with Tyler's things, one decorated for Jeremy. 6 years ago, my brother was sitting on a bus that crashed into a pole, and because of where he was seated, he was the only one that died. My dad stood at the crash site for 6 hours. He kept touching the pole where Tyler's blood had dried, whispering, "Get up, champ. Coach needs you to get up." The cops had to physically escort him away. At first, I thought we were there for each other, looking through Tyler's trophies, watching his game footage, sitting in silence when ESPN played. I thought I understood loss. I thought when Dad started coaching Little League again, he was healing. But I never noticed when he began staying after practice with one kid, Jeremy, who had Tyler's same southpaw pitch. Kids got potential, Dad explained, demonstrating Jeremy's wind-up at dinner. Throws just like Ty did at that age. My stomach twisted, but I told myself it was just Dad being a coach, until Dad started showing up at Jeremy's house completely unannounced with extra equipment. That's when I knew I had to step up my support game. No pun intended, LOL. Yes, I know my humor is dark. "Dad, maybe you should give the family some space," but he'd brush me off. "His parents don't understand baseball, Marcus. They don't see what that kid could become." Well, after weeks of Dad missing work to watch Jeremy's practices and texting the kid's mom about development opportunities, I stopped saying anything. I myself was barely hanging by a thread, and I figured some over-involvement was normal, but things got worse. I was doom-scrolling on TikTok when I heard Dad calling Jeremy Ty during practice. I thought I was imagining it, but when I looked up, I saw it. He gave Jeremy Tyler's brand of cleats in the exact same size. Sigh. As soon as we got back to the car, I tried to spark up a real conversation, but he just got this intense look and said, "Tyler's teaching me through him, Marcus. I can feel it." That night at dinner, he wouldn't even look at me. He spent the whole meal on his phone, texting Jeremy's mom about a crucial tournament he'd registered Jeremy for without asking. He'd disappear to the batting cages for hours, and other parents started complaining about him pulling their kids aside to demonstrate why Jeremy was special, like my boy Tyler was. One Saturday morning, he woke me up at dawn saying, "Today's the tournament, the big one." I thought he meant he was finally ready to visit Tyler's grave, but as he loaded the truck with camping gear and coolers, he seemed almost manic, humming Tyler's walk-up song. I should have checked which tournament. I should have asked where. As it happened, my neighbor friend DJ called me panicking around noon. Jeremy's parents had shown up at our house with the police. My blood went cold. DJ found a note in Dad's truck about taking Jeremy to a special training camp 3 states away where Tyler had always wanted to go. I sped to the campground Dad had marked on an old map in Tyler's room. When I arrived, I heard shouting from the woods. Dad had Jeremy in Tyler's practice jersey, trying to make him run drills. The kid, maybe 11 years old, was crying, "I want to go home. You said my mom said it was okay." Dad just kept barking orders in his coach voice. "Tyler never quit. You're better than this." "Dad, what the actual F are you doing?" I yelled, my whole body shaking. Dad looked at me with pure joy, tears in his eyes. "Marcus, you made it. Look, Tyler's been working on his slider. Show your brother Ty." The kid saw me and ran over desperately. He made me get in his truck. He said we were just going to D's Sporting Goods. I grabbed Jeremy, and Dad went completely feral. "Don't confuse him. You're ruining his concentration." He tried to pull the boy back. I managed to get Jeremy to my car while Dad chased us, screaming that I was destroying Tyler's second chance. "He needs this camp. You're letting him become another wasted talent." When I told the 911 operator I had the kidnapped boy, Dad's face went gray. "No, no, 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 no. His mother agreed. She signed the permission slip." He pulled out a clearly forged document. "Tyler told me what to write. He speaks to me through the pitches." When the police arrived, Dad completely lost it. He tried to lock himself in his truck with Tyler's equipment bag. It took 4 officers to subdue him while he thrashed and wailed. "Marcus, tell them Tyler's back." The officers finally got him into custody while he pressed his face against the patrol car window. Jeremy was reunited with his terrified parents, who'd been searching for 5 hours. Dad had apparently convinced Jeremy to come by, saying his parents wanted him to get special coaching and were meeting them there. After Dad's arrest, the psychiatric evaluation found him incompetent to stand trial. He was put into a state facility for 6 months, or so I thought, because after just a month, he was released for being a model patient, and he was out for blood. Or more specifically, he was out for Jeremy. I froze at those words. Link below, channel? My mind raced as I stared at the screen. This wasn't happening. Not now. Not when Dad had just gotten out. My phone buzzed immediately. Sarah, my girlfriend, texted me a screenshot from some true crime YouTube channel. The thumbnail showed Dad's mugshot next to Jeremy's school photo with bold red text, "Coach gone mad, the Tyler replacement story." I scrolled through the comments, hundreds of people dissecting our family tragedy like entertainment. Someone had even found Tyler's obituary and posted it. My hands shook as I closed the app. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Mrs. Chen, our family therapist from before Dad's arrest. She held a folder and wore that practiced sympathy face I'd grown to hate. I opened the door, and she immediately launched into her rehearsed speech about Dad's remarkable progress at the facility, how he'd acknowledged his grief-driven delusions, how he understood Jeremy wasn't Tyler, how the medication was working wonders. She handed me discharge papers. Dad had listed me as his emergency contact and primary support person. The papers detailed his treatment plan, medication schedule, and mandatory check-ins. Everything looked official and reassuring. Too reassuring. My phone rang. Jeremy's mother. Her voice cracked as she explained what happened at the grocery store 20 minutes ago. She'd been loading groceries when she spotted Dad through her car window, standing at the edge of the Little League field parking lot, just standing there, watching practice. When their eyes met, he'd smiled and waved like nothing had happened. I grabbed my keys and raced to the field. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the diamond where Tyler used to play. Sure enough, Dad stood by the fence, chatting with a group of parents. He wore his old coaching windbreaker, the one with Coach Williams embroidered on the back. As I approached, I heard him explaining how he'd been away for medical leave, but was excited to get back to mentoring young athletes. The other parents nodded politely, unaware of why he'd really been gone. Jeremy's mom had already pulled her son from practice and left. Dad saw me, and his face lit up. He excused himself from the group and walked over with that same eerie calm from the hospital. A medical bracelet glinted on his wrist, presumably some kind of monitoring device. In the parking lot, he gripped my shoulders with both hands. His eyes were clear, focused, medicated. He spoke slowly, deliberately, like he'd rehearsed this moment 100 times. He understood now. The doctors had helped him see reality. Jeremy wasn't Tyler. He knew that. Tyler was gone, and nothing could bring him back. The words were right, but something in his delivery made my skin crawl. This clarity felt more dangerous than his delusions. Back at my apartment, I found 3 of Tyler's trophies moved from my bookshelf to my coffee table, arranged in a perfect triangle. My spare key, the one I'd given Dad years ago for emergencies, lay in the center. On my pillow sat Tyler's rookie baseball card, the one Dad had bought him for his 8th birthday, the one that should have been in Dad's storage unit. My phone lit up with a text from DJ. He'd installed a doorbell camera after the kidnapping incident. The footage from 3 a.m. showed Dad standing outside my door, completely still, just staring at it for 17 minutes before letting himself in. I changed my locks that afternoon, but the damage was done. He wanted me to know he could still reach me, that he was thinking about things, planning things. Jeremy's parents called a lawyer about a restraining order. The lawyer explained that Dad's psychiatric release complicated everything. The facility had declared him stable and compliant with treatment. The month-long involuntary hold had exhausted most of their legal options. Without a new threat or violation, their hands were tied. I found Dad at Tyler's favorite diner that evening, sitting in our old booth. 3 plates of food waited on the table, including Tyler's usual order of chicken fingers and fries. Dad smiled when I slid into the seat across from him. He pushed a manila folder across the table. Inside were pages and pages of journal entries from his time in the facility. Each entry meticulously detailed Jeremy's schedule, his habits, his fears, his favorite snacks. The level of detail was staggering. He'd somehow gathered all this information while locked in a psychiatric ward. The final entry was dated yesterday. Tomorrow I get to make things right. Not by replacing Tyler, but by protecting Jeremy the way I couldn't protect Tyler. Marcus will understand. He has to. I realized Dad had spent his month inside not getting better, but getting smarter. He'd learned exactly what the doctors wanted to hear. He'd played the model patient while his obsession evolved into something more calculated. During his time away, he'd somehow befriended Jeremy's babysitter's family. The babysitter's mom thought he was just a sweet, grieving father who'd had a breakdown. She'd been updating him on Jeremy through their correspondence, thinking she was helping his recovery by keeping him connected to the community. The baseball league president called an emergency meeting after several parents complained about Dad hanging around practices. Dad showed up with a doctor's note clearing him to return to coaching. The psychiatrist had actually recommended resuming normal activities as part of his treatment plan. I started following Dad more closely. One afternoon, he left his truck unlocked at the baseball field. Inside, I found a receipt from that morning for youth baseball equipment, all in Jeremy's size: cleats, glove, batting helmet. In the glove compartment was an apartment lease application for a unit 3 blocks from Jeremy's school. Jeremy's teacher called me after Dad visited the school. He'd signed in as Jeremy's grandfather and asked detailed questions about the boy's academic progress. The teacher only realized something was wrong when she mentioned it to Jeremy's mom at pickup. Sarah initially took Dad's side. She'd always been big on second chances and mental health advocacy. Dad had texted her thanking her for believing in family healing, and she thought I was being paranoid. We argued about it over dinner while Dad sent her articles about successful psychiatric rehabilitation. Everything changed when Sarah found something on her phone. While looking for a photo, she'd stumbled across an old screenshot from Tyler's social media, a post from 2 years before his death. Dad scaring the Morrison kid again. Why does he always pick left-handed pitchers? The Morrison family had moved away suddenly 3 years before Tyler died. I'd never connected it to Dad before. Dad had started a grief support group specifically for fathers who'd lost athletic sons. He'd recruited Jeremy's uncle, whose daughter had died of cancer the previous year. Through him, Dad was getting even more information information about Jeremy's family. My boss called me into his office. Someone had contacted the company about my harassment of a mental health patient. They'd filed a formal complaint about me missing work to stalk my poor, recovering father. I got an official warning. Dr. Chen dismissed my concerns during our mandatory family session. Dad had shown remarkable progress, she insisted. Perhaps I needed to examine my inability to forgive. She gestured to a photo on her desk, her own son in a baseball uniform. I wondered if Dad had noticed it too. I followed Dad to a storage unit across town. Through a gap in the door, I watched him arranging two complete bedroom setups. One side held all of Tyler's things, perfectly preserved. The other side was new, decorated in Jeremy's favorite colors with posters of his favorite players. The storage facility manager found me there. Instead of kicking me out, he pulled me aside. He'd been concerned about Dad's behavior during visits, the way he'd talk to himself, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing. As Dad's emergency contact, the manager let me document what was inside. The walls were covered in photos of Jeremy, game shots, school photos, candids taken from a distance. The timeline at the bottom showed Dad had been planning this since his arrest, not since his release. Other baseball parents started comparing notes. Dad knew things he shouldn't. Food allergies, fears, favorite movies. One mom realized he knew her custody schedule better than her ex-husband did. I traced the storage unit rental to the week before Tyler's death. In a box marked Prospects, I found photos of 3 other boys, all left-handed pitchers, all around Tyler's age when their families had moved away. Jeremy's coach Tom admitted Dad had been helping with practice plans. He seemed genuinely knowledgeable and helpful, making Tom question my warnings. But Tom's wife pulled me aside at the grocery store. Something felt off. Dad had asked if Jeremy could sleep over after their tournament next month. She'd been documenting their conversations in her phone. When Dad learned about her suspicions, Tom suddenly received an offer to be head coach in another district. The timing was too convenient. The hardware store confrontation happened on a Thursday. Jeremy's dad had finally had enough. He cornered Dad in the fastener aisle, demanding he stay away from his son. Dad's response chilled everyone who heard it. He looked Jeremy's father straight in the eye and spoke calmly, rationally. He thought about Jeremy every single night. Didn't any good parent want extra eyes looking out for their child? Wasn't that what community meant? The way he said it, so reasonable, so caring, made it impossible to argue without sounding paranoid. That was Dad's new weapon. Not the manic desperation of before, but this calculated reasonableness that made everyone else look crazy for being concerned. Dad started telling Sarah about my supposed jealousy issues from childhood, bringing up incidents I barely remembered. He showed her old therapy notes from when I was 15, explaining how I'd always resented the bond he shared with Tyler. The documents were real, taken from sessions after Tyler broke his arm, and I'd admitted feeling left out. Dad twisted every word to paint me as unstable, mentioning how I'd been hoarding Tyler's journal like some kind of obsessive collector. I recognized the pattern immediately from an entry in Tyler's old journal I'd finally read. Tyler had written about Dad's manipulation tactics, calling it his divide and conquer strategy. Make everyone doubt the person who sees through him. Create enough confusion that people question their own judgment. Tyler had seen it happen with the Morrison kids' family, watched Dad systematically isolate anyone who questioned his methods. Mrs. Patterson, our elderly neighbor, approached me one morning while I was checking my mail. She mentioned seeing Dad standing outside Jeremy's bedroom window at night, just watching like he was checking on his own child. She'd been keeping a detailed log for 2 weeks, documenting times and dates. Her husband had been stalked years ago by a former business partner, so she knew the importance of documentation. The babysitter's mom started questioning Dad's stories after he slipped during their coffee meeting and called Jeremy by Tyler's name. She noticed his medical bracelet wasn't just for identification, but actually contained a GPS tracker. The realization that he'd been monitored this whole time made her wonder what else she'd missed. During a family dinner at my apartment, I openly recorded Dad describing Jeremy's bedtime routine in perfect detail. He knew which stuffed animals the boy kept on his bed, which nightlight he used, how many times his mother checked on him before midnight. I made sure to follow single-party consent laws, keeping my phone visible on the table. A police visit revealed the restraining order Jeremy's parents thought they'd filed had never been processed due to some administrative error. The officer suggested family mediation instead, explaining that without immediate threat or violation, their options were limited. The system seemed designed to protect Dad's rights more than Jeremy's safety. Mrs. Patterson offered me her observation logs and agreed to continue monitoring Dad's movements. She taught me basic counter-surveillance techniques her husband had learned in the military. Simple things like varying routes, checking for familiar cars, noting anyone who appeared in multiple locations throughout the day. DJ's security cameras revealed something disturbing. Dad had been testing emergency response times around Jeremy's neighborhood. He'd call 911 from different payphones reporting various emergencies, then time how long it took police to arrive. He was mapping out the system's weaknesses. A woman from Dad's grief support group contacted me after their church meeting. She explained how Dad had been talking about second chances with sons, about how God sometimes gave fathers another opportunity to get things right. Pastor Williams had asked her to check on our family family, concerned about the intensity of Dad's comments. At the next PTA meeting, Dad volunteered to chaperone the upcoming field trip. I maintained perfect calm, while other parents noted the contrast between my restraint and Dad's enthusiastic involvement. Jeremy's mom caught my eye and mouthed a silent thank you for not making a scene. Jeremy's family started planning a sudden vacation to get away, but they needed 3 days to arrange time off work and school. Dad mentioned at the coffee shop that he happened to be free all next week. Such a coincidence. The timing made everyone nervous. The babysitter admitted Dad had offered her $500 to bring Jeremy to the park alone. He'd explained it was for surprise birthday party planning, wanted to get the boys' input on themes and activities. She showed me the cash he'd given her as a deposit, brand new bills in sequential order. During Little League registration, Dad's mask slipped when he discovered Jeremy's name wasn't on the roster. Parents watched him shake with barely controlled rage before he caught himself and recovered. One father started recording on his phone, sensing something was wrong with the situation. Dad approached me with Tyler's prized glove, the one he'd caught his first no-hitter with. He offered it to me if I would stop interfering with what was meant to be. When I refused, his eyes went cold and flat, like looking at a stranger wearing my father's face. Tom's wife showed other parents her documentation of Dad's requests and comments. A small group began forming, parents who would quietly monitor Dad's movements without alerting him to their surveillance. They created a shared calendar marking his known locations and patterns. Sarah discovered Dad had lied about his therapy breakthrough. What a massive web of planning Dad's been weaving. Finding out he had that storage unit before Tyler even died completely changes everything. Those photos of other boys in the prospects box made my heart skip, not gonna lie. Hospital records showed his supposed breakthrough had occurred in the first week, meaning he'd spent the remaining 3 weeks planning and preparing while maintaining his Model Patient Act. The records also showed he'd been researching custody law in the facility's library. Only 5 families still defended Dad, all parents whose children hadn't made varsity teams. They appreciated his mentoring and extra attention, unable to see the danger in his focused interest. Dad cultivated these relationships carefully, always knowing exactly what each parent wanted to hear. I found Dad's notebook forgotten in the diner booth after our last meeting. Inside, he detailed something called the Jeremy Integration Plan with distinct phases: befriend, isolate, rescue, relocate. The final phase was dated for next week. Each phase had sub-steps, contingencies, and multiple backup plans. Sarah chose to support me despite her parents calling her unsupportive of mental health recovery. They accused her of abandoning family values and enabling my paranoia. She moved in with me for safety, bringing only essentials and setting up security measures on all her devices. We developed code words and check-in systems, documenting everything in cloud storage with multiple backups. Sarah created spreadsheets tracking Dad's movements, cross-referencing them with Jeremy's schedule to identify patterns and danger zones. Despite my rage at Dad's manipulation, I refused to plant evidence or exaggerate his actions. I told Jeremy's parents that truth would be enough, that we didn't need to lie or embellish. The reality of Dad's behavior was disturbing enough without embellishment. Dad confronted me at a gas station, accusing me of jealousy over his relationship with Tyler. During his rant, he accidentally revealed he knew Jeremy's family's vacation destination, information they'd kept strictly confidential. I caught the slip on my phone's recording app. 3 families corroborated seeing Dad in places he claimed he hadn't been. They created a shared document logging sightings with photos when possible. The evidence showed Dad maintaining surveillance on multiple children, not just Jeremy. Dad's remaining supporters began wavering when he started asking detailed questions about their own children's schedules. His interest seemed too intense, too specific. One mother noticed him taking notes during casual conversations about her daughter's activities. A pattern emerged in the support group meetings. Dad specifically targeted fathers of athletic children between ages 10 and 12, with particular interest in those who showed left-handed tendencies. Every prospect fit the same profile Tyler had at that age. Parents created a phone tree and neighborhood watch system specifically for Jeremy's safety, though they never mentioned Dad by name. They coordinated pickup and drop-off schedules, ensuring no child was ever alone or vulnerable. At church, Dad broke down during prayer requests, claiming I was stealing his second chance at fatherhood. Pastor Williams gently but firmly guided him to a quiet room, showing the practiced compassion of someone experienced with mental health crises. The congregation watched with mixed sympathy and concern. 5 families formally apologized to me for doubting my warnings. They offered to help however needed, including 2 of Dad's former defenders who'd finally seen through his manipulation. Their support felt like validation after weeks of being painted as the villain. Dad's options shrank as parents coordinated their protective efforts. No child was ever alone at practice. Locations were changed randomly, and schedules were kept secret until the last minute. The community had created an invisible fence around their children. DJ's research revealed Dad had approached another family 2 years ago. Their son Jake, also a left-handed pitcher, had shown promise. The family moved suddenly after Dad offered to privately coach the boy. Jake's mom confirmed by phone that Dad's behavior had escalated until until they felt leaving was their only option. I worked to ensure Jeremy's family could maintain safe spaces while keeping up with work and school schedules. We created the appearance of normal life while implementing extensive safety measures. The goal was protection, without making Jeremy feel like a prisoner. 12 families now actively protected Jeremy through coordinated efforts. They shared pickup duties, randomly changed practice schedules, and created multiple safe routes between locations. The network operated smoothly without formal organization. Dad's attempts to get practice schedules failed repeatedly. He tried bribing kids with valuable baseball cards, offering to trade rare ones for information. Parents intercepted these attempts, warning their children about accepting gifts from him. The community center coordinator caught Dad copying the youth program roster after hours. His explanation about updating his coaching contacts didn't match the sign-in log showing he'd entered through a propped door. She called me immediately after escorting him out. Local coaches shared warnings about Dad at their regional meeting. His reputation spread through legitimate channels as coaches protected their programs from potential infiltration. Word traveled fast in the tight-knit baseball community. Sarah found storage unit payment records showing Dad had rented the unit the day after Tyler's funeral 6 years ago. He'd been planning something for years, long before Jeremy entered the picture. The revelation reframed everything we thought we knew about his grief. Jeremy's family car developed 4 flat tires overnight. The mechanic found nails placed deliberately in specific patterns to ensure all tires would fail simultaneously. The family had to delay their departure while security footage from nearby businesses mysteriously showed corruption during the crucial hours. A grocery clerk mentioned Dad buying camping supplies and asking about the best routes to avoid traffic with children. He'd been specific about needing supplies for 1 adult and 1 child, purchasing items clearly meant for someone Jeremy's size. I realized I faced a choice between protecting Jeremy and salvaging any relationship with my father. The decision felt inevitable, but still tore at me. Blood relations couldn't override the safety of an innocent child. Instead of confronting Dad aggressively, I arranged an intervention with Dr. Chen present. I used Dad's trust in the therapist to create a safe environment for confrontation. The meeting was carefully planned to avoid triggering his defensive responses. Support group members confronted Dad about his comments regarding second chances. They refused to enable his delusions, each sharing their observations independently. The church's lay counselor took careful notes to help Dad's treatment team understand the situation. Dad's carefully constructed narrative crumbled as each person shared specific incidents. The weight of collective testimony broke through his reasonable facade. For a moment, his mask slipped completely, revealing the desperate delusion underneath. Dad agreed to voluntary psychiatric hold after the intervention. His agreement felt like victory, like we'd finally broken through. I allowed myself a moment of hope that proper treatment might help him process his grief appropriately. 3 hours later, Dad checked himself out. The law allowed voluntary patients to leave at any time, and he exercised that right immediately. The hospital couldn't hold him without new evidence of immediate danger. Dr. Chen called me with trembling voice. Dad had told her I was keeping his son from him, and he meant Jeremy, not Tyler. The delusion had evolved beyond simple replacement to full ownership. She finally understood the danger she'd dismissed for weeks. Dad's employer fired him after multiple unexplained absences. He saw this as freedom to focus on what really mattered. He cleaned out his desk with eerie calm, telling co-workers he had more important responsibilities now. 23 families united in protecting Jeremy through documented safety protocols that carefully avoided violating Dad's civil rights. They walked a legal tightrope, maintaining vigilance without crossing into harassment territory. Local news picked up the community cooperation angle without naming our family. They presented it as neighbors helping neighbors, unaware of the underlying danger. Dad saw himself portrayed as a victim in online comments, fueling his persecution complex. I presented a 47-page timeline to Adult Protective Services showing Dad's deteriorating mental state. They reviewed it thoroughly, but concluded he was too functional to warrant intervention. They suggested I seek therapy for my own stress. The breakthrough came when hospital security provided footage of Dad's late-night attempts to access the pediatric ward. He'd been caught multiple times trying to read patient charts, claiming he was looking for his son. Security had escorted him out without filing reports. The nurse who recognized Dad from Jeremy's photo revealed something worse. During his volunteer shifts reading to sick children, he'd been asking specific questions about athletic boys who needed father figures. She showed me the visitor log where he'd marked certain room numbers with tiny stars. I compiled everything into a 47-page document. Every observation, every recording, every witness statement. Each entry was signed and dated by the person who'd witnessed it. The weight of community testimony filled 3 binders. Jeremy's parents presented our evidence to family court. The judge reviewed it carefully, expressing genuine concern, but without an actual crime being committed, her hands were tied. She recommended continued vigilance and documentation. The community refused to let this setback defeat them. They created an even tighter protective network around Jeremy, ensuring he never felt imprisoned by their care. The boy could still play baseball, attend school, have friends. They just made sure he was never vulnerable. Dad rented an RV SUV and parked it at the campground where he'd taken Jeremy before. He left notes on my car windshield with increasing frequency. Each one contained the same message about going camping this weekend, always including a photo of Tyler's grave. Sarah discovered all 4 of our tires had been deflated overnight. The valves had been carefully removed, technically not vandalism. Security footage from our building showed corruption during the exact time frame, but Dad had a solid alibi from his grief support group. 3 families who'd been actively protecting Jeremy received threatening letters from an anonymous lawyer about interfering with family reunification. The letters referenced specific private conversations that only someone with inside knowledge could know. The language was too sophisticated for Dad to have written alone. I faced a choice. Dad wanted me at that campground, and I knew it was a trap. But while he focused on me, the community could ensure Jeremy's safety. I decided to go, but not alone. Mrs. Patterson's husband, a former Navy officer, agreed to accompany me. He understood dangerous situations and how to handle unstable individuals. We drove separately, maintaining communication through our phones. The campground was exactly as I remembered from Dad's arrest, but now he'd transformed it into something else. 2 tents stood erected in the clearing, one adult-sized, one clearly meant for a child. Tyler's equipment bag sat outside, along with a cooler stocked with Jeremy's favorite snacks. Dad emerged from the woods as we arrived. His appearance shocked me. He'd lost weight, his clothes hung loose, and his eyes had a fevered brightness. He smiled with genuine joy at seeing me, as if I'd finally accepted his invitation to a family reunion. He'd built an elaborate shrine near the fire pit. Tyler's photos covered a makeshift altar mixed with newer pictures of Jeremy. Baseball cards, trophies, and equipment surrounded candles that flickered in the afternoon breeze. The whole scene felt like a memorial service waiting to happen. Dad explained his vision while Mrs. Patterson's husband positioned himself strategically nearby. The fantasy was complete in Dad's mind. Tyler lived on through Jeremy, and once I accepted this truth, we could be a family again. The medication had clouded his thinking, he insisted, but now everything was clear. He revealed he'd stopped taking his medication 3 weeks ago. The pills had prevented Tyler from speaking to him clearly. Without them, he could hear his son's voice again, guiding him toward Jeremy. The GPS bracelet on his wrist had been disabled with aluminum foil. Mrs. Patterson's husband quietly texted our GPS coordinates to the police, while Dad rambled about his plans. His military training showed in how he maintained a non-threatening posture while staying ready to intervene. I kept Dad talking, letting him explain his elaborate fantasy. The moment of truth came when I pulled out Tyler's journal. I'd kept it locked away since the funeral, unable to face my brother's private thoughts. But now I needed Dad to hear Tyler's own words about feeling scared of Dad's intensity. I opened to the final entries, dated just weeks before Tyler's death. My brother had written about Dad's suffocating attention, his fear of disappointing him, his worry about what would happen if he ever quit baseball. The most chilling line made my hands shake as I read it aloud. Dad's reaction was immediate and visceral. He collapsed to his knees, screaming denials. For the first time since Tyler's death, I saw him truly grieve. Not the performative sorrow he'd shown before, but raw, genuine anguish. He grabbed at the journal, but I held it away. The community's coordination proved perfect. While Dad broke down at the campground, Jeremy's parents arrived with police at a safe distance. They'd timed it precisely to ensure Dad's capture without endangering anyone. The parents watched from their car as officers approached. Dad made one final manipulation attempt. He claimed I'd planted the journal, that Tyler would never write such things. But his conviction crumbled when a handwriting expert, brought specifically for this possibility, confirmed the journal's authenticity using samples from Tyler's schoolwork. The police placed Dad under psychiatric hold, but this time it was involuntary. The documented evidence, the disabled GPS bracelet, the medication non-compliance, and the shrine at the campground provided enough justification. A judge signed the order immediately based on the clear danger Dad posed. In the ambulance, something shifted in Dad. He looked at me with clear eyes for the first time in years. He said Tyler's name, then added 2 words that hit me like a physical blow. Tyler was gone. The simple acknowledgement felt like a dam breaking. The community created a scholarship fund in Tyler's name for young athletes. They wanted something positive to emerge from the tragedy. Jeremy's family contributed first, grateful their son was safe. The fund would help kids who loved baseball but couldn't afford equipment or league fees. 6 months passed before I heard from Dad again. He'd responded well to proper treatment in a facility equipped for long-term care. His letter arrived on a Tuesday, handwritten on plain paper. He apologized without excuses, acknowledging the pain he'd caused. He understood if I never forgave him. Most importantly, he didn't mention Jeremy once. I visited Tyler's grave alone for the first time since his funeral. No Dad hovering nearby, no performance of grief for others to see, just me and my brother's memory. I told him about the scholarship, about how Jeremy was safe, about how Dad was finally getting help. 2 years later, I sat in the bleachers watching Jeremy pitch in a high school game. He threw nothing like Tyler, had developed his own style completely. His parents waved from their seats. The community bonds formed during the crisis had evolved into genuine friendships. Dad remained in assisted living, finding peace in woodworking therapy. He'd accepted accepted Tyler's death and built a quiet life around that acceptance. I visited monthly, maintaining boundaries but allowing for healing. Sarah and I had married in a small ceremony, building our own life free from the shadow of Dad's grief. The weight of misplaced loyalty no longer controlled my choices. Tyler's memory lived on through the scholarship recipients, not through dangerous obsessions. Families who'd united to protect Jeremy had learned that sometimes love means standing against family members who've lost their way. The invisible fence they'd built had transformed into visible support networks. Jeremy pitched his final inning as I watched, his own person, free to succeed or fail without the ghost of my brother defining his worth. That freedom felt like the most fitting tribute to Tyler's memory. The scholarship helping kids who can't afford baseball equipment is the perfect way to honor Tyler's memory. That moment when Dad finally said Tyler was gone gave me chills. Seeing the OP visit Tyler's grave alone and have that quiet talk with his brother was so touching. Thanks for watching. I have a lot of uploads going up every day. Clean your room, bro.